In today's lesson, we're going to be learning about algebraic proofs. You've been solving equations, doing, what you do on one side, you do on the other, but now you're going to have to justify each of these steps. And you're going to be using properties that you learned last year, but we also reviewed this year, including the distributive property, the subtraction property of equality, the addition property of equality, the division property of equality, and the multiplication property of equality. So the teacher is going to hand you the algebraic properties review sheet. This is yours to keep. Please do not lose it. I will post a copy of it on Edline just in case. But you really want to use this to help you with your equations today, and it's something that you do want to have memorized before your test. With the addition and subtraction property of equality, all you're doing is adding to one side and therefore adding to the other, or subtracting from one side and therefore subtracting from the other. So take, for instance, the equation x plus 5 equals 9. This is on your algebraic properties review sheet. In order to solve this equation, you would subtract 5 from both sides. We know this. But this step right here, this subtracting 5 on both sides, gives you the subtraction property of equality. So when you get x equals 4, you got this through the subtraction property, and we'll abbreviate it, of equality. Basically saying that you're keeping this equation equal by subtracting the same amount on both sides. The same could be true if it was y minus 2 equals 10. When you add 2 to both sides, you suddenly get y equals 12. Well, this is from the addition property of equality. And I'm going to run out of space, so I'm just going to abbreviate all of this. But you know what I'm saying. With the multiplication and division property of equality, it's the same thing as before, but with multiplication and division. So take, for instance, if you had 4w equals 20. Looking at this equation, you would, to get w by itself, to isolate the variable, you would divide by 4 on both sides, and you would get w equals 5. Well, going from our original, this is what we're going to call the given. It's the equation you're starting with. We divided by 4 on both sides, so we used the division property of equality to get the answer w equals 5. Again, same thing with multiplication. If I had something like u divided by 7 equals negative 3, I'm going to multiply by 7 on both sides and get u equals negative 21. Well, this comes from the multiplication property of equality. You really know all of this stuff already. It's just now putting algebraic properties with it. So now let's go to your notes. On your note sheet, there are 3 blank tables. These are the types of tables you're going to be setting up when you justify algebraic proofs. Let's start with our first example. I'm going to give you the equation 5x minus 4 equals 6. You're going to do the work on one side and you're going to justify on the other. Alright, so the first step in our solving this problem is we're going to write the given. We are given 5x minus 4 equals 6. So our justification is that we're given this information. You're always going to start with the given, and when you get into geometry next year, you're going to be doing a lot more proofs like this. So get used to it now. The first thing we want to do is, hopefully you're thinking to yourself, plus 4 on both sides. And that's going to give us our second step, which is 5x equals 10. Now think to yourself for a minute, what property did we use when we added 4 to both sides to get 5x equals 10? Hopefully you thought of the addition property of equality. If you did, you are correct. So that's your justification for step 2. You use the addition property of equality to add 4 to both sides to get 5x equals 10. Finally, to solve 5x equals 10, we are going to divide both sides by 5, and we get our third and final step, which is x equals 2. How did we get that third step? Look at your algebraic properties review sheet and try and fill it out yourself. Hopefully you said the division property of equality, and if you did, you are correct. This is our algebraic proof, and this is what you're going to have to do every time you solve a problem and it asks for justification. It's just asking for you to give each property that you used in order to solve it. But remember, this is step 1 right here, the given. This is step 2, 5x equals 10. Step 3 is x equals 2. The stuff we did here, plus 4 and divided by 5, is us just showing our work, but that's not actually part of the proof. Do I want you to show it though? Absolutely. You know that I want to see all of your work all of the time. Let's try another problem. Let's try negative 3/4 x equals negative 15. So what's the first thing you're going to do? Look at the last problem and try to write the first step on your own. Just the first step. Alright, the first step should be you rewriting the problem. Negative 3/4 x equals negative 15. And what's our justification? Well, this is our given information. So that's all we need to write is given. Alright, our next step. There's 2 ways to do this. I'm going to write it in 2 different colors because I want you to see that either way works, but they use different properties. So the first way would be, since I have this 4 in the denominator, to multiply both sides by 4. So step 2, I'm going to get negative 3x equals negative 60 because I multiplied both sides by 4, and that would be with the, and I'm going to abbreviate here just because I'm out of space, multiplication property of equality. So I multiplied both sides by 4 and got negative 3x equals negative 60. My next step would then be to divide both sides by negative 3, and I get x equals 20. And what's the reason for that? Hopefully you're thinking to yourself, oops, sorry, technology, you know me, I'm not great at it. The division property of equality. So this is one way to do it. This is an extra step in here than the other way I'm going to do it, but for a lot of you this will be the best way. So some of you hopefully are thinking to yourself, well, why did I have to multiply by 4 and then divide by negative 3 when I could have just multiplied both sides by the inverse? Meaning I take, if I have negative 3/4 x equals negative 15, I multiply both sides by the multiplicative inverse. And what I end up getting is these cancel out, and I'm left with x equals 15 divided by 3 is 5, or negative 5. Negative times a negative is a positive, and 5 times 4 is 20. So I was able to do that in one step. But your justification is a little different. If you turn to the back of your algebraic properties review sheet, you will see a property called the inverse property of multiplication. That is what we did here. We multiplied both sides using the inverse. So when you multiply both sides using the inverse, they cancel out and you get 1. So negative 4/3 times negative 3/4 gives you 1. 1x, which is x. And then on the other side, we're not changing the equality of the equation, but we are doing what we did over here in 2 steps in 1. So either way you want to solve this is fine, whatever you're more comfortable with, but you do need to know how to solve it with fractions. Finally, let's look at one more problem. Think if you can get this problem, which is going to be a lot more complicated than you can do any of these. So the problem is going to be 4 times the quantity 5x plus 15 minus 6x equals 18. So 4 times the quantity of 5x plus 15 minus 6x equals 18. First step, hopefully you know by now, should be to write your given. So 1, I'm going to have 4 times 5x plus 15 minus 6x equals 18. And that is my given. Alright, hopefully you're thinking to yourself, what's the next step? And you're going, I see parentheses and I remember that DCMI, distribute, combine, move variables over and constants over to either side, and then isolate the variable. Well, that is correct in the sense that I want to do the parentheses first. I want to distribute. So my step 2, actually we won't write 2 yet, but what I'm going to do is distribute by doing 4 times 5x, which is 20x, 4 times 15, which is 60, minus 6x equals 18. This is going to be our step 2. And hopefully you're looking at your sheet and you know exactly what property we just did, because we talk about it every day, and I even use the word. So think about it for a second, write it on your paper. Hopefully you wrote the distributive property. It's one of our favorites. We're going to use it all the time. So we just used the distributive property to simplify our original equation into this. Next, you can start moving things to one side, or, as I've been telling you, combine like terms. Look at this side of the equation, and I see that I have a 20x and I have a negative 6x. Hopefully you're saying to yourself, oh, that's easy. 20x minus 6x is 14x. So my step 3 is I'm going to combine like terms. I'm going to combine 20x with negative 6x and get 14x. I'm going to have plus 60 equals 18. Well, this step doesn't really have a property, at least not one that's written on our algebraic properties review sheet. But we did combine like terms, which is a process that can be used as justification, but we're not going to write that. We're actually going to write grouping, because that's what we did. We grouped like terms together. So if you just write grouping, I'll know exactly what you mean. It means that you combined like terms. But remember, you can only combine like terms on one side of the equation. Now we've got an equation that we've seen before. We know how to do this. You guys are already experts, I'm sure. But hopefully you're thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to subtract 60. So my step 4 is going to be 14x equals 18 minus 60. Hopefully you know that is negative 42. So what property did we just use when we subtracted 60 on both sides? We use the subtraction property of equality. And finally, our last step is we're going to divide both sides by 14, and we get step 5, x equals negative 3. What property did we use? Think about it and write it down. We use the division property of equality. So this is exactly how you do algebraic proofs. You show your work on one side, please show all of it, and on the other side you write out your justifications. The answer you get after every step is what goes with the number that you're labeling your steps. So those of you that did 2, 3 steps all at the same time, you're now going to see why that doesn't work and why I've been trying to get you to show all your work and do all of your steps one at a time, because here we now have to justify every single step. So what you're going to work on now is classwork. It's a bunch of problems just like these. You're going to solve the problems on the left, justify on the right, use the algebraic properties review sheet to help you, and then hopefully if there's time I'll have the answer key for you with the sub, and I will also post it all on Edline. You'll have homework tonight that's similar properties, showing the justification and solving the equations, and I will answer any and all questions that you have tomorrow. You can also email me if you have questions tonight. I will be available. I'm unfortunately at a class today, so that's why I'm not in school. But please email me if you want. Otherwise, we will go over it all tomorrow. I hope you have a great day.